Okay. Yeah. Well, Adrian, Rob, thank you again for inviting me. I always like presenting whenever I get the opportunity. So thank you again. Okay, yeah. So once again, my name is RJ Reyes. I think I've met just about everybody, or at least maybe the folks that are currently here. But in case not, there's my info. There's my Discord. There's my LinkedIn. I shared my Google slides both on this Zoom chat as well as the Philly IGDA general Discord server general channel. So you can find these links and these slides there as well. So let's get into it. Really quick, a little bit more info about me. I've been working in the games industry since 2004. So over the past 20 years, and I counted recently because I'm currently job searching, and I counted how many jobs are currently in my LinkedIn. I had to cut a couple in my resume because it was getting too big. But I've had 15 game jobs over the past 20 years. That sounds like a lot, and it is because I've gotten laid off a lot. There have been a lot of project cancellations, studio closures, just layoffs in general. So I didn't. I'm averaging like about a year, somewhere between a year and a half for every single job. I don't like that my average is so short because if I had things my way, like one of my favorite jobs I had back in 2008, I'd still be working in that job if I had things my way. But unfortunately, I've had to jump around a lot. So, but the I guess you can find a silver lining to that because I've had so many jobs over the past couple of decades. I've had to send so many applications. I've had 15 job successes. So I'd like to think that I kind of know what I'm talking about when it comes to applying for game jobs and hopefully landing a game job. So with that in mind, my quick presentation is specifically about how to write an ATS friendly resume. So before we get into that, what is an ATS? An ATS or an applicant tracking system. All it is, it's just a program that human resources, recruiters, hiring managers, anybody that does recruiting, an ATS or applicant tracking system, it's just a computer software that helps them with the recruiting process. Specifically, it helps them by it gathers, it stores, and it sorts and filters through all the resumes, all the applications that each individual company could receive whenever they have a job opening. The ATS, it does other things like there are some, I guess, advanced ATSs that do things that handle that assist, I should say, with the entire application process from, actually maybe what do you call it? Refining the job posting. The ATSs can assist recruiters in communicating with applicants, that kind of thing. But for this presentation, we're going to focus on, and I figure for applicants, the most important thing that the ATS does, what we should focus on is it stores all of our resumes and it filters. And the way that it filters these resumes because, you can imagine if there's a giant company like, let's say, Epic Games that receives hundreds, if not thousands of applications like every single week or every single month, you're going to get thousands upon thousands of resumes that accumulate in their ATS or in their database. So the ATS, it would be pretty much impossible for like a team of humans to go through like, I don't know, 5,000, 10,000 plus resumes trying to find good fits. So the ATS, it helps filter and hopefully find the right the resumes for an applicant that's a good fit by searching and filtering certain keywords within the resumes. And we'll talk a little bit more about keywords a little bit further on. Last thing I'll say before I go to the next slide. If your resume does not contain the right keywords for that are relevant and applicable to that particular job you're applying for, and also if your resume is not properly formatted in an ATS friendly manner, then there are multiple things that can prevent your resume from being found during an ATS database search or applicant search. So, and that's why we're going to very quickly go into how to write an ATS friendly resume. So now, before we get into that, real quick, so here's like a rule of thumb to figure out which companies are likely to use ATSs and which won't. So the rule of thumb that I recommend is think that if you're applying to a large company, especially a big AAA company, in other words, a company that's big enough that it has its own human resources department, so not just a single recruiter, not just a single HR person, but like an entire department that handles everything HR, including recruiting. If you're applying to a AAA company or any other big company that has its own HR department, chances are, or it's very, very, very likely that they use ATS. They use an ATS, maybe multiple ATSs. I don't know. But so again, if it's a big company, if it has its own HR department, very good chance they use an ATS. On the flip side, if you're applying to a small indie, and maybe there are some folks here, or like I know that there are a lot of folks in the Philly IGDA Discord server and in the local Philly community that have their own indie studios. But if you're applying to an indie studio or any other small studio that probably doesn't have their own HR department, then chances are they do not use ATSs. And I can tell you from personal experience, and I'm sure some of you have this experience as well, like working for an indie or working for indies that had to hire. We didn't have an ATS. We didn't have a program that helped with that. And we didn't even have an HR person to help with that. So me as a producer, I would act as like the hiring manager or the recruiter in that case. Or maybe there'd be a lead. Like if an indie studio is hiring an artist, maybe it's the lead artist or the lone art director. If you have to hire a programmer, maybe it's the tech director that's actually doing the hiring and the job application, the job posting, and what have you. So once again, if you're applying to a small company, like let's say a small indie, any company that's so small that it doesn't not have its own HR department, chances are they do not use ATSs. And the reason that is, it boils down to cost, because ATSs, just like programming, are just like dev tools. They cost money. Chances are they cost a lot of money for as far as applications or programs are concerned. So smaller studios that might have to, they're a little bit more concerned about budgeting every little thing. They probably don't want to spend the money to pay for an ATS, whereas your giant companies, your AAA companies, they have the budget to pay for an ATS. Last thing I'll say before I move on, if you want, you can have two different versions of your resume, an ATS friendly version, which I'll get into in the next slide, and then also the like for the artists out there or the designers or anybody that has the talent and passion in visual creativity. I know that a lot of devs, creative devs, or visually creative devs like having fancy, eye-catching, visually appealing resumes. You can have a visually appealing resume and send that to an application when you're confident that it's going to be a human being that will be the first person that looks at the resume. Like if you're sending your application or your resume directly to someone's email, like to the studio head or to the lead, to the art director, the program, the technical director, what have you, then go ahead and send the fancy visually appealing resume. If not, if you think that it's going to be read by a machine, by an ATS, go with the ATS Friendly Resume, which I will now finally get. I skipped it. Okay, so just fast and dirty, how to make an ATS Friendly Resume. In the job posting, I always like to say that the job application or the job post, excuse me, not the application, the job post is, a job application, think of it like a puzzle. And the job posting gives you, like, it straight up gives you the answers to that puzzle. And by that, I mean, when you're reading a job post, read it carefully, read it 2, 3, read it multiple times. And while you're reading it and rereading it, look for at least 10 keywords. So phrases or words that pop up repeatedly or are written like probably at the very top, like if there's a list of bullet points, what are the keywords or what are the phrases or words that are repeated are listed at, bullet point number 1 or bullet point number 2. What phrases or words are repeated? What phrases or words appear at the very top? So identify at least 10 keywords from the job posting and then figure out how to naturally insert those keywords into your resume. Because, as I mentioned earlier, one of the big things that an ATS or applicant tracking system, one of the big things that it does is it searches for keywords in the thousands upon thousands of resumes that might be stored in its database, and it's looking for a certain number of those keywords. I don't know exactly what that threshold is. I don't know exactly what that minimum number of keywords is, but I figure if you go through the effort and take the time to go through a job posting, find those keywords, and then figure out how to naturally insert them into your resume, you increase your chances of your resume being grabbed or found during an ATS filtering or during search. One other quick note, and I did this very recently. You can use ChatGPT to help you identify keywords. And the way that you do that, like I just did this the other day. So right before I sent an application, I looked at the job posting, I read it, I identified using my own eyeballs. I found like 10 keywords. Then I copied the entire job posting, plugged it, or pasted it, I should say, into ChatGPT, and then on top of that, I said, "Hey, ChatGPT or whatever, let's see, here's a job posting. Please help me identify the keywords in this job posting." And then, like in a matter of seconds, as ChatGPT does, it spit out. If I remember correctly, it was like between 30 or 40 keywords. I think that's overkill. Like, I'm not saying that you should be inserting 30 to 40 keywords into your resume and customize your resume for every single job posting. But at the very least, we're using ChatGPT to help you, review, quickly scan a job posting and identify the keywords. It helped me find some keywords that my own eyeballs that I missed. So again, I didn't use all 30 or 40 keywords that ChatGPT found, but I looked through that list and then I found like 2 or 3 additional ones that they looked good to me. They made sense to me. I grabbed those 2 or 3 keywords that ChatGPT identified and then added those to my own personal list and then inserted all those words, those 13 or 14 keywords, into my resume that I sent to that specific application. And that's another thing I recommend. Customize your resume for each application. So that's the first and probably the most important thing. Identify keywords and insert those from the job posting and then insert those into your resume. And then in addition to that, like just some basic formatting tips. ChatGPT, it gets messed up or it gets confused. Supposedly, this is what I've read. It gets confused by non-standard, or I guess you can say fancy fonts. So just to make certain that your resume doesn't mess up doesn't mess up an ATS search, just make sure that you're sticking with the standard fonts. And here's a list. I'm not gonna read the entire thing, but your standard fonts from Arial all the way to Helvetica. But there's a list, standard fonts. Font size 10 to 11 is fine, but don't use, like there are hundreds of fonts. Just stick with this list. That's my recommendation. Fancy images, like for those of you who are graphic designers or like any other kind of visual artist, when typically an artist, when they create their resume, they make it visually appealing because that's their job. So naturally, they make the resume visually appealing with, like some colors splashed here or there, or intricate borders or whatnot. But images that are inserted into a resume, there's a possibility that that can also mess up an ATS search. So, and then also extra columns, headers and footers. Let's see, trying to insert additional information like onto the sides. So basically, whether it comes to the font, whether we're talking about the fonts or additional images or just the formatting in general, keep things standard. I guess you can say, in a way, keep things boring and don't go visually fancy or don't go too complicated. The context, the content, I should say, of your resume, because it's telling your background, it's telling your story. The content, the text has to be compelling. It has to be interesting. But when it comes to the formatting and then the visuals, you can keep those standard, you can keep those boring. But yeah, so those are some just quick and dirty tips on how to create an ATS friendly resume. Now, real quick, let me exit out of slideshow view, and just real quick, I'll show you my resume. So once again, I linked my presentation, which contains these links, So I linked it in this chat, and I also put in the Philly IGDA server, but Discord server. But anyway, here's a link to my resume. And the reason I posted my resume is just to walk you through very quickly how I used these ATS friendly tips and applied those to my resume. So the first thing, like when it comes to keywords, that's first and foremost the most important thing. So my most recent contract, I was working on Lego Fortnite, and that contract ended a couple months ago. So for the past couple of months, I've been searching pretty aggressively for my next job. I've sent and I have this number written down. I've sent over seven, or excuse me, yeah, it was over. I've sent over 70 over the past couple of months. And while I was sending those applications and reading those 70 plus job postings, I noticed that there are, and I'm applying for producer jobs. I noticed that there were several keywords and phrases that would always pop up. Like no matter if I was applying to a big company, a small company, a dev, or a publisher, whatever. And then not game devs, but like game adjacent companies, any kind of producer job, there were certain keywords that would pop up pretty often. So I identified what those words or phrases were, and I added them to my resume. And to make things easier on me, I just put them under. So as you can see, it's the top of my resume. Hopefully all of you can see it. But I have this competencies subsection, and all of the keywords that I've seen repeated through multiple different producer job postings, I just put all those keywords into that section. So things like planning, problem solving, project management, blah, 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 agile methodologies, waterfall communication, all these things. So those are I guess you can say the key keywords. I put them in the very top of my resume. So when I say that I make this easier on me, whenever I find another word that I notice is used pretty often in different job postings, I'll add that to this section. That way, like I kind of cut down on how often I have to customize my resume, because ultimately I'm lazy. And you know what the saying is, work smarter, not harder. So I try to avoid customizing my resume for every single job application. Basically, I'll customize my resume if I'm applying to a job that really super excites me. But if it's a job that doesn't exactly excite me super much, then it's like, I'll just go with my standard resume, and I'll just rely on my keywords, my big list of keywords that are right here at the top. But anyway, keywords important, and that's an example of how I incorporated keywords into my resume. When I'm customizing my resume to a specific job posting and I identify different keywords that may not appear in my giant list at the top, I'll try to insert them as naturally as I can into my bullet points, in my work history. So anyway, I think that's enough about keywords for now. Other things, as you can see, formatting wise, it's a standard format. I don't remember off the top of my head what font this is. I think this is just Arial, boring, reliable Arial. This is Arial, maybe font size 11. As you can see, I don't have any columns. So because like some resumes is split into at least 2 columns, I don't have any information on the sides. When I first edited this or created this in Word, like my name and then my LinkedIn link, this information at the top, this is not a header, because you know how you can put things into, when using Word or using Google Docs or your word processor of choice, you can actually edit the header. This is not a header, because supposedly headers and footers, they mess ATSs up. So this is basically just the body of my resume that just looks like a header. Hopefully that makes sense. But anyway, standard formatting, standard font. I have no visual art talent or graphic design talent, so visually this is a very boring looking resume. I'd like to think that the content and my experience and my story, I hope that this sounds compelling. I hope that it to a recruiter or to a hiring manager, I hope this looks interesting. But when it comes to the format, as standard as can be. So, and again, the reason I keep it like this is, 1, I don't have any artistic talent. 2, I don't want to risk confusing an ATS. So once again, keywords, super important. Standard formatting, also important. Okay, I think that is just about it. And then real last slide or second to last slide. Earlier, Rob posted his game dev resources, which looks amazing. And thanks for sharing that, Rob. But I've also linked. This is just my job hunting resources spreadsheet. So there's a link. When you click on it, it goes to this. I won't explain everything here because a lot of it is self-explanatory. Everything's labeled. You got job boards at the top. You got here's Amir Satvat's LinkedIn, because Amir Satvat is a very helpful guy. And then here are some useful Discord servers that I recommend that you join. But anyway, everything's clearly labeled. Read the notes over here. But here are a lot of game job hunting resources that I use, that I've actively been using, and I always recommend whenever I give game job hunting advice to other professionals. But anyway, so once again, I've shared my presentation. You have all these links, and yeah, so good job hunting for any of you who are looking for jobs. Yeah, good luck, and thanks for listening, everybody. And that is it. I will stop sharing.
All right, thank you so much, RJ.
Mhm.
Very helpful, very informative, especially and fun for me with my initials, Adrian Thomas Sandoval. Um, Writing an Adrian ATS friendly resume. Rob has a question. I'm gonna let Rob ask it before we go to the crowd.
No, I was actually trying to clap and
Oh,
raised my hand and said, because apparently I'm an idiot. But RJ, that was really cool. And thinking about, I will have a question or a comment really quickly. I know we want to move on, but I've been hearing from some people that using AI to optimize both your resume and your cover letter is starting to impact um, the AI that's filtering the content. And so if you're not using AI to optimize, that you might be falling off the candidate list because it's they're start apparently numbers are starting to show up that show that AI tuned things are the ones that are getting selected and filtered.
Yeah, it's like
So
supposedly it's like a feedback loop, right? It's
yeah, sort
AI
of
use. Yeah.
a disturbing thought.
And on that note, Rob, I've been hearing that I've read about that as well, which fascinated me. So I did a little bit of reading, and I'm already getting like conflicting. And I think this is standard for anything, or in this case, it's standard when it comes to job applications. If you ask like 10 different recruiters, like, oh, what's the best way to format a resume, or how useful or not useful is AI? If you ask 10 different recruiters any kind of job hunting question, you're probably going to get like maybe not 10 but like at least 5 different answers. So I've read some accounts, or some articles from recruiters that said what you said, Rob, but then others are saying we don't use, like, the ATS doesn't really, some, not all, but some recruiters that say ATSs don't really rely on AI that much because we just use the ATS as just filtering for keywords and just as a database and to help things sort. But on the flip side, there are some recruiters that say, yeah, there are some ATSs that are getting more advanced and they do use AI. So yeah, it's just like with anything regarding job applications, this whole mind-numbing process, it's a mixed bag. It's very difficult to hone in on like a single. I guess there's no such thing as like a single way or the single right way. It's You just try different things and hope that you find the right combination that gets you that one job offer. Because ultimately, you only need to, for each job search, you only need to succeed once. So you don't, so.
I want to also give the online folks, if you have a question for RJ, you can either just write it in the chat or put it in the Q&A. Anyone here in person have a question for RJ? I couldn't help but notice, RJ, that your resume was 2 pages, and I feel like that's always been the lifelong debate of 1 page or two for resumes. And I wonder if does that make a difference to any ATS systems that you're aware of?
I haven't heard when it comes to resume length, I hear a lot of and again, sometimes it's conflicting, but I hear a lot of opinions about how it affects a human being or a recruiter or a hiring manager reading your resume. I haven't yet found anything regarding page length. and how it may or may not affect an ATS. But anyway, when it comes to page resume length, for a long time I've used the rule of thumb of what is it? For every 1 page for every 10 years of experience. So at the very least, for anyone who's just starting off their game dev career, stick with 1 page. I often hear, and again, this is like a human recruiter preference. They prefer 1 page for someone who's just starting out, because as you can imagine, recruiters are probably looking at dozens upon dozens of resumes a week, maybe dozens on a single day. So they you know, like, you want to make your resume. You have to put yourselves in the shoes of a recruiter. If they have to look at a dozen resumes before lunch, your resume has to be like, you look at a resume real fast and get an idea. Oh, so at the very top, here's a quick summary, and then I just very quickly scan it. I see a lot of experience, all contained in 1 page. That's enough to put me in the read more later pile, or something like that. But in my case, I've been working in the games industry for a lot. My resume used to be 3 pages, and it took me a lot of cutting to finally get it down to a lean 2 pages. But anyway, the rule of thumb that I follow for every decade of experience, 1 page.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.